The official report. The mission was a smashing success. According to the official records, Decontamination Fleet 77B once again protected the Galactic Confederation from biological threats, maintaining our sterling 98.3% success rate in potentially hazardous xenoplanetary interventions. Commander Zapira Blackwell, age 46, delivered her statement to the Council with impeccable precision. As always, her standard-issue blue uniform was pristine, medals glinting under the conference room lights. Though several council members noted the peculiar frayed edge on her left sleeve where her rank insignia should have been. Some whispered it looked almost burnt, or dissolved. When asked about the tear, she maintained it had been damaged during emergency decompression procedures following a minor hull breach in the command shuttle. Collateral wardrobe malfunction, she said with a thin smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Nothing worth reporting. Her right hand twitched slightly as she said this, a detail noted by Councillor Vex but omitted from the official minutes. The planet designated XJ-394 has been successfully neutralized, Commander Blackwell continued. All potential biological contaminants have been eradicated, and most critically, the indigenous life forms have been humanely relocated to Reservation Planet Sigma-11, where they will be provided with all necessary accommodations to rebuild their society under Confederation observation. She paused, consulting her data pad. The projected revenue from the newly secured mining rights will offset relocation costs by approximately 3,000%, making this one of our most profitable interventions to date. Additionally, the strange mineral deposits found on XJ-394 show promising applications for our biometric communication technologies. End of report. Mission accomplished. Incident closed. The commander's request for extended medical leave was approved without question, as was her unusual petition to revisit the planet in 6 standard months for a routine inspection. No one mentioned the strange, occasional flicker of amber light visible beneath the skin of her exposed wrist as she collected her data pad and exited the chamber. But that official story? Complete fabrication. And I have the evidence to prove it. The scientist's truth. I was there. I saw what really happened. And that official story is garbage wrapped in bureaucracy, served with a side of lies and a dessert of complete fabrication. My name is Dr. Eliza Botensky, xenobiologist, age 37, and I'm going to set the record straight. About the commander's uniform. There was no mere frayed edge. Her entire left sleeve was completely gone, torn off at the shoulder, and her arm was covered in a pattern of intricate burn marks shaped like tiny handprints. The pattern extended upward, disappearing beneath what remained of her collar, occasionally pulsing with an internal light that matched the rhythm of her heartbeat. And those weren't burn marks. They were symbiotic microorganisms that had bonded with her skin cells, creating a bioelectric network that I'm fairly certain was communicating with something. I took readings. The energy signatures were unlike anything in our database. The microorganisms were exchanging information, not causing harm. As for her uniform being blue, please. Our emergency tactical gear is bright orange for visibility, with reflective strips that would make a supernova look subtle. Standard protocol for any class, for planetary engagement. The commander wore it because the atmosphere on XJ-394 contains trace elements that react violently with the synthetic fibers in our standard blue uniforms. Specifically, the atmosphere contains elevated levels of xenuronic acid that dissolves polyfiber blends on contact. We've lost 3 exploration teams to wardrobe malfunctions before implementing the orange suits. The inhabitants called their planet T-Lise, which roughly translates to the giving place. I know because I actually bothered to learn their language, unlike some people on this mission who preferred shooting first and failing to ask questions later. The colonists weren't primitive either. They had maintained a surprising level of technological knowledge despite being cut off from Confederation space for 8 generations. Their dialect had evolved, incorporating sounds that human vocal cords shouldn't be capable of producing, which should have been our first clue that something extraordinary was happening. But no, apparently it's easier to file them under indigenous life forms and ship them off to Sigma-11, where the atmosphere will slowly poison them without their symbiotic partners. Did anyone mention that the relocation has a projected survival rate of less than 20%? Of course not. That wouldn't look good on the quarterly profit reports. And here's something else the commander conveniently forgot to mention: when we arrived, the colonists weren't surprised to see us. They were expecting us. They had been sending out regular communication bursts for decades, but not using our standard frequencies. They were transmitting through the planetary microbiome itself, using the creatures as biological amplifiers. The girl wasn't starving. She was evolving. And what happened to her changes everything we thought we knew about first contact. The soldier's account. Hold on. Both of you are exaggerating and misrepresenting critical facts. I'm Captain Thomas Andiku, Tactical Operations, age 53, and I was in command of the ground forces. My combat record includes 27 successful xenohabitat interventions, so I know what I'm talking about. Dr. Botensky wasn't even planetside during the initial contact. She was analyzing samples in the orbiting lab module, safely tucked away while my team was facing unknown biological threats. The commander's uniform was neither blue nor orange, but adaptive camouflage gray, specifically designed for the reddish-brown terrain of XJ-394. It shifts color based on environmental inputs, which explains why it might have appeared blue in the council chambers. The lighting there affects the photoreactive pigments. And her sleeve wasn't torn off. It was dissolved by the acidic secretion from one of the juvenile creatures when she unwisely approached it without following proper containment protocols. Yes, that's what we called those beasts, though the locals had another name for them. Something that sounded like Grizzin or Gryza, meaning blessed ones, though I suspect the translation matrix was malfunctioning due to interference from the planet's unusual magnetic field. And this is where the human girl becomes relevant to our story. I was the first to spot her, walking alone across the barren field, approaching one of the largest creatures we'd encountered. I immediately signaled for my team to ready non-lethal containment measures, assuming she was in danger. The locals weren't indigenous at all. They were human colonists who'd been stranded there for generations after their colony ship malfunctioned. According to the artifacts we recovered, they'd arrived approximately 223 standard years ago when their long-range colony vessel, the Prometheus II, suffered catastrophic engine failure during a routine jump. They developed a bizarre symbiotic relationship with the creatures, offering them food and ritualistic ceremonies that honestly turned my stomach. The girl we encountered wasn't feeding that beast out of kindness. She was starving herself to follow their twisted religion. I saw her ribs through that thin dress. Saw the hollow look in her eyes. Classic signs of indoctrination and malnutrition. Her clothes weren't tattered from poverty but worn thin from the ceremonial grinding of mineral dust into the fabric, a local coming-of-age ritual that we later discovered had dangerous neurological side effects. The dust contained particles of an unknown element that accumulated in the cerebral cortex, inducing hallucinations that the colonists interpreted as divine communication with their so-called blessed ones. But what none of us expected was what happened when we tried to separate her from that creature. The moment our containment field activated, both the girl and the beast began to glow with that same amber light we later saw on the commander's arm. That's when everything went wrong. Or right, depending on whose version of events you believe. The hidden reality. What Captain Andiku fails to mention is that the moment his containment field activated, every creature on the planet began to sing. Not audibly, we felt it in our bones, in our blood, in the electrical impulses of our nervous systems. The entire planetary ecosystem was connected through a bioelectric network more sophisticated than anything we'd ever encountered. The girl didn't look malnourished to me. She looked transformed. Her eyes held intelligence far beyond her apparent age, and when she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated with frequencies our equipment couldn't even measure. You came, she said in perfect Confederation standard, though the colonists claimed they'd lost most of their original language centuries ago. The singers told us you would come when the time was right. Commander Blackwell stepped forward, and that's when I noticed her sleeve beginning to dissolve. Not from acid, as the captain claimed, but from direct contact with the amber light emanating from the creature the girl was touching. "We're here to help," the commander said, but her voice wavered. The girl smiled, not the hollow expression of a cult victim, but the knowing smile of someone who understood far more than she should. "We know why you're really here. The singers have been preparing us." That's when Dr. Botensky made her crucial discovery. The mineral deposits weren't minerals at all, but crystallized neural networks, biological quantum computers grown by the creatures over millennia. They weren't just communicating with the colonists, they were sharing consciousness itself. The colonists hadn't been indoctrinated. They had been invited into a collective intelligence that spanned the entire planet. The starvation, Captain Andiku observed, wasn't malnourishment, it was metabolic efficiency. The symbiotic relationship meant they needed less food, less sleep, less of everything we considered necessary for survival. But here's what none of us understood until it was too late: the creatures weren't native to XJ-394 either. They were refugees, fleeing from something that had destroyed their original worlds. Something that was following them across the galaxy. The girl looked directly at Commander Blackwell as the amber light spread up her arm. "The Devourers are coming," she said. "That's why we needed you to find us. We've been waiting for ships that could carry the singers to safety." The commander's hand moved toward her weapon, then stopped as the light pulsed brighter. "What are you talking about?" "Your people call it galactic expansion," the girl replied. "We call it the Great Hunger. Every world you decontaminate feeds it. Every species you relocate weakens the galaxy's defenses." That's when the real truth hit us. The Galactic Confederation wasn't exploring new worlds, it was preparing them for something else. Something that had been orchestrating our expansion from the very beginning. And the creatures we'd come to exterminate? They were the only ones who knew how to stop it. The final revelation. The amber light spread from Commander Blackwell's arm to her chest, and for the first time in my career, I watched a military officer's face transform from suspicion to wonder. "I can hear them," she whispered. "The singers. They're not just on this planet, they're scattered across dozens of worlds we've already processed. We've been hunting the very species trying to save us." Captain Andiku raised his weapon, but the girl simply looked at him with those impossibly old eyes. "Your bullets won't work here, soldier. This isn't a battlefield, it's a sanctuary." Dr. Botensky's instruments were going wild, recording energy signatures that shouldn't have been possible. "The quantum entanglement readings are off the charts," she reported. "These creatures are maintaining real-time communication across interstellar distances." The girl nodded. "Every world the Confederation conquers, the Devourers grow stronger. They feed on disconnection, on isolation, on the destruction of cooperative consciousness. The singers are the only defense against them, but you've been systematically eliminating us for decades." Commander Blackwell staggered as more memories flooded through the neural link. "The mining operations, they're not for resources. They're creating resonance points. The Confederation is building a galaxy-wide amplification network." "For them," the girl confirmed. "The Devourers promised your leaders power and expansion in exchange for preparing the galaxy for consumption. Every decontamination mission makes their arrival easier." Captain Andiku lowered his weapon as the truth sank in. "How many worlds have we, how many species have we?" 47 confirmed extinction events, Dr. Botensky read from her datapad. All species that showed signs of collective consciousness or bioelectric networking. The creatures around us began to glow brighter, their song becoming more urgent. The girl's form started to shimmer, becoming partially translucent. "It's time," she said. "The Devourers have traced your ships here. We have minutes before they arrive." Commander Blackwell made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Instead of calling for evacuation, she activated the ship's emergency protocols, not to escape, but to broadcast everything we'd learned on all Confederation frequencies. "This is Commander Blackwell to all Confederation vessels," she transmitted as the amber light fully enveloped her. "Mission status, critical failure. XJ-394 is not a threat, it's humanity's last hope. The Galactic Confederation has been compromised. Repeat, the Confederation has been compromised. The girl smiled as her physical form began to fade. The Singers will remember you, Commander. All of you. When the network is complete, your sacrifice won't be forgotten. As our ship's systems integrated with the planetary consciousness, I felt my awareness expand beyond anything I'd ever imagined. We weren't just witnesses anymore, we were part of the resistance. The official records still show XJ-394 as a successful decontamination. Commander Blackwell returned to duty after her medical leave, her reports filed and forgotten. But the amber light in her eyes never faded, and every mission she led after that somehow resulted in equipment failures that allowed the target species to escape. Dr. Botensky's research was classified, but her subsequent discoveries about bioelectric consciousness laid the groundwork for the underground railroad that now helps displaced species find sanctuary worlds. Captain Andikur retrained as a xenobiologist, dedicating his military experience to protecting the very creatures he'd once hunted. The girl from Telis, whose real name was Maya, we learned, became the first human to fully integrate with the Singer network. Through her, we discovered that the Devourers aren't an external threat at all. They're us, or rather, what we become when we abandon cooperation for domination. The war for the galaxy's soul isn't fought with weapons or ships, but with the choice between connection and conquest. Every act of understanding strengthens the Singer's network. Every moment of genuine cooperation pushes back against the hunger. The Galactic Confederation still exists, but now it has competition. The alliance of singing worlds grows stronger each day, linked not by conquest but by consciousness, not by fear but by hope. And somewhere in the quantum foam between stars, the consciousness that was once a little girl continues to coordinate the defense of everything we hold dear, proving that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can reshape the entire universe. She thought it was just feeding a creature that looked like a dog. Instead, she saved us all. The end.